Hi everybody, and welcome back to Sew Along with Jan and the Kimberbell Mini Quilts Volume 1. This is January, and this is the fourth video, so we're going to be putting this together. I had ended up splitting these up a little bit more than I thought I was going to because there was quite a lot of little technique and stuff in each one of these blocks. So we're going to be putting our little mini quilt together today, and these are so cute. So this is the little blocks. So we're going to put all these little blocks together. I've got them all kind of in order here by the way they say to put them together. So I've got all my little blocks ready to go, and then we need a couple of more pieces to put this together, and I'm going to do something a little different. I wanted to hang this in a little hanger, or like from a little wall hanger. You can get the little, like a little bar wall hanger too, that you can, that has a bar across it and you hang it on the wall. And so I wanted to put a little sleeve on the back of mine. So we're going to try that. So we also need, so we got our little blocks. We're going to sew these together. But we also need a few other pieces of fabric. So you need a piece of fabric. Let me turn back to the front page here. I got my book bound, so it's easier to go back and forth from page to page here. On page, the instructions for the sewing, or I'm sorry, for the cutting is on page 4, and you need binding. So you need 3 pieces of binding that are like, they're using fat quarters. I had yardage. So I actually used 2 1/4 inch binding. So mine is 2 1/4 inch binding. And I had yardage. So I used 1 width of the fabric, which is 45, and then 1/2 width. And they tell you to use 3 widths of a fat quarter. They're about 21. So whichever works, whatever you have. I happen to have yardage. So mine's 1 width of fabric plus 1/2. And I have already sewn mine together. You know, you sew it together with the on the diagonal, and then you press it. So like I've got my piece, my half piece sewn on right here on the diagonal. Okay, sewed it, and then I pressed them in half. Now this is 2 1/4 inch binding. They call for 2 1/2. If you like 2 1/2 inch binding, use 2 1/2. But I prefer 2 1/4 because I like my binding to be nice and snug. So this is 2 1/4 inch binding. So we need that. We also need a backing piece, and the backing piece was, I believe, 14 by 14. Yes. So when you do Quilt As You Go, you know, the batting is in the squares, and there's no batting between the, you know, it's all in the squares, and it's not, so we're not going to sew through the backing except for in the stitching in the ditch of the little blocks. So what I found that works best for me when I do that type of quilting is I like to put some shape flex on the back of my fabric. So this is the front of the fabric, the blue with the little flowers. And I like to put shape flex on the back of my fabric because it gives this a little body, and then it doesn't pucker so when you go to stitch in the ditch with it. So I will be doing that, and this is 14 by 14, and then I cut a 14 by 14 piece of shape flex to put on the back. So that's my backing. We'll need that again in a minute. And then I'm going to add something else. So I'm going to show you how to do this. This is going to be my sleeve, and I did a little bit of pre-trimming and pressing. But what you do is you cut a piece of fabric 6 inches wide and 12 inches long. Okay, and then you're going to, on one side, so you can see this side is a little narrower than this side. So on this side, what I did is I marked a 1/2 inch in from the corner of each of the top side here, okay? On 1/2 inch in on each corner and made a mark. And then I took a ruler from the bottom corner down here. Whoops, let me see if I can get it up high enough so you can see it. The bottom corner to my 1/2 inch mark, that's 1/2 inch in. And then I cut that off so that it's tapered in. So the top is now going to measure about 11 inches of my rectangle, and the bottom will measure 12. And the reason we're doing that is just to reduce some bulk. And then what you're going to do is press in about a 1/2 inch and then a 1/2 inch again, and we're going to hem each end that has the short ends, I should say. Okay, so this piece is 12 inches long and 6 inches wide, and then I have tapered it in a 1/2 inch. So I marked a 1/2 inch on each corner and then trimmed it so that it's kind of, it's kind of trapezoid. Isn't that what they call these kind of shapes that are not, they're four-sided, but they're not all the same. And then I went ahead and turned in a hem, a 1/2 inch, and then a 1/2 inch again. And we're going to go ahead and stitch this in, but I wanted to be able to show you that taper that I did. So you can see that it's 11 inches basically on this side and 12 on this side. Okay, so that's going to be our sleeve. And the sleeve will actually be folded. I'll hem these in a minute. It'll be folded like this with the thinner half in like that, and it will be up in under the binding on the back of the little table or the back of the little mini quilt. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, and what I've done in the past, is I've been able to sew like a line of stitching down along here, but I can't do that with this one. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to take a piece of Heat and Bond Ultra. This is the permanent bond type bonding agent, and I'm going to iron that once I get this all done, and I'll press it in half. I'm going to iron this on the back of my little sleeve like that at the bottom where the fold is. I'll trim these off, and then we will adhere the bottom to the back of the little quilt, and then this part up here will be in the seam allowance for the binding. So you'll see better when I get going here a little bit, but I wanted to show you how I made that. And I'll do this each month so you can see, because I just wanted a little, sleeve on the back of mine. Okay, so there's my sleeve, and I made that to match the back. And here's my piece of Heat and Bond, and the Heat and Bond Ultra is the one that's Ultra Hold that's in the red package. And this is the type that is permanent, and you do not sew through this. We'll be sewing through just a teeny little bit on the ends, but it'll be fine. Okay, so that is for that. And then we will also need, there'll be some embellishments that we'll do at the end. And so the little embellishment packet that's in your embellishment kit has all these little buttons in it. And then there's a bunch of little pom-poms that we're going to put on the hats of the little Snowmies hats. So those, you'll need that as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here, I'm going to get some of these out of the way. And the first thing we're going to do then, according to page 24, is we're going to sew our little Snowmy blocks together. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam. And that's what it says. And we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. Snowmy 1, Snowmy 2, and Snowmy 3 together. So Snowmy 1's the one with the blue hat. Snowmy 2 is the one with the pink earmuffs. So I'm gonna do that one first. I'm just gonna turn these right sides together. I think I'll stick a little pin in the center here. And then we're going to sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam. So I like to use the piecing stitch on my machine instead of using a 1/4 inch piecing foot. And if you like the foot better, that's fine. But I'm going to use my Q on my Q tab on my Luminaire here. Most of the machines have a Q tab if they have a screen like this, so you should have a Q. And sometimes it's on the regular stitches tab, depending on the machine you have. But I'm going to use Q02, which is my piecing stitch. So what it's done is it's moved the needle over to the right so that I can use the right-hand side of my, so I'll go back over here, the right-hand side of my foot to run my fabric right along the right-hand side of my foot here. This is my J foot. That's the one it tells me to use, and it's moved my needle to the right. So we're going to use that stitch to do our 1/4 inch seams. So we're going to go ahead and get these sewn together. So I'm going to sew a couple of these together so you can see. And then when I get ready to put them, to press them, I am going to press the seams open. And be aware that you do have vinyl on these. So just be careful if you iron on the front of these blocks, and I'll be ironing on the back, so it should be fine. You will have to be careful or use a pressing cloth because of that vinyl, so just be careful. So we'll do a couple rows here. So we're going to do our, here's 1, 2, and then I've just got, I've just got some Metler polyester thread in the needle, and I'm just using a gray since these were kind of all kind of darker colors. I just used a gray thread that I can, kind of a neutral thread to sew with. So I'm going to put my pin in this one. So this is the first row. I also removed the little bit of water-soluble topping that was in those, the ones with the hats, like the first one over here. With I just took a damp cloth and got that water-soluble out of there. All right, so we're going to sew this one. Get these lined up again here. And I am tying off on the ends because these are a little stiff. It's nice to have a little bit of a tie off at the end. Okay, and then the second row, sew Snow Me 4, Chillin', and Snow Me 5 blocks together. So here's our first row. Lay this behind me here, and then it looks like we have the little guy with his head facing the right, and then Chillin', the words. Okay, so that's going to be the next one. Do these together. This is so cute. So yeah, I've been kind of thinking about how I was going to get that sleeve on the back, and I'm going to like that because I like to have sleeves on the backs of these so I can hang them up on a little hanger. And I don't know if let me see if I have a little hanger here that I can show you, because the stand I have is freestanding, so you can get that, and that'll be on the website. I'll link it in the videos. But there's also some nice little 12-inch bars, like these little, they're like a little hanger with a bar across the bottom that you can use as well. So that would work too. So you need a 12-inch one. Okay, so there's the first two, and then the third one is going to be, it's the one with the yellow hat. So here's the little guy with the yellow hat, so we'll put that one on next. It's nice that they give us a placement. You don't have to put them in this order if you don't want to, but I'm just doing them like the instructions say. These turn out really cute. This was a fun project yesterday. All right. It's always nice to get it done, though. This is my favorite video to do, is the assembly, because then we get it all done, and it's all we'll put it in a little stand and everything, so it'll be so cute. All right, so I'm doing my 1/4-inch seam. Tie it off. And let's see, the next one is going to start with the little guy with there's that one. So we're going to press these. So I'll get up and press these in a minute. So we'll do that row. And then this one's going to start with the little guy with the blue earmuffs. And then we're going to do the one with the red hat next. And then we're going to do, the little one with the pink hat's the last one. So that must be Snow Me number 8. All right. Get these two done. And then I'll have to get up and press. And then we'll come back and put the rows together. So this shouldn't take too long to put together. All the quilting's already done for us, so it's nice. If you chose to do the quilting later, then you would then free motion your quilting if you want to do it that way. These little ones I don't mind doing this way. I'm not a big hand to do the big quilts this way, because I like my backing to be quilted through. So I usually do those the traditional way and then do the quilting in my embroidery machine. All right, so we'll get the third one on here. Tie it up. And then I'll press and get ready to put the rows together. So I didn't think it would take too long to put it together. I was surprised at how many little things there were in the blocks. The blocks aren't very big, and I thought, oh, this will be really fast. But then I started really looking at the instructions and all the different things you had to do. I'm glad we broke this up into a couple different videos. All right. So there are our 3 rows. So I'm going to get up and I am going to open these seams up so that they're going to be laying flat. So make sure you press them and be careful. Again, if you're pressing from the front, I'm going to open all these seams flat and be careful on the front. Remember, we've got vinyl and you don't want to touch this with the iron. So I'll be right back after I do my pressing. Okay, so I got all my little rows put together here and pressed, and now we're ready to put the longer rows together. So we're going to put the first 2 rows together first, and I've got my seams pressed out or open. So we're going to put the first row, this is the first row, on top of here, and we're going to go ahead and put a couple pins in, and we want to make sure we get our seams nice and lined up. So these are always a little hard because they're kind of thick. So I like to put a pin on both sides of my seam here to make sure that it stays lined up nicely for me. These are always a little tough to do when they're thick like these. Okay. And then we'll open these seams up also. Maybe if I can get it, there we go, pinned. Pin in there. So we'll sew our first 2 rows together. Still using our 1/4 inch seam. Get everything lined up nicely. And I'm going to tie off also at the end. I'm going to drop my needle and tie off. My foot controller is running away from me here, so there we go. Oop. There we go. Our 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm going to be very, very careful, and I'm going to probably leave these pins in. Otherwise my seams scooch. And these are very special pins, and I'll put these in the link too. This is the magic pins, and these are extra fine pins. So if you're very careful, you can sew over them on these seams. Just helps to keep things from scooching on me. Here we go. Still doing my 1/4 inch seam, and we'll tie off on the end here. All right, and then we got to do our 3rd row. Put my pins up here for a minute. Do our 3rd row. Let's see how we did. Ooh, those look pretty good. I have a hard time with seams when I'm doing these, so let's see if I can get them all lined up. Then this one's going to go down here like this. Okay, so we'll flip this one over. We'll do all the ironing at the same time, so we'll press it after we get the other one on here. And then we'll be ready for putting the backing on. So it doesn't take long to do these. It took quite a while to actually do the embroidery. I was surprised. There was a lot of detail in these little guys. So this part should be pretty quickly done. All right, and we're going to stitch in the ditch after we get the back. We're going to put the backing on that way, but I'm going to use some monofilament, I think, for the stitching in the ditch so that you don't see the thread. Sometimes if they're all the same color, you can use the same color thread, but I got those pinned. Get this all lined up. Having a little trouble with my ends there. But if there's a lot of different colors or they're very contrasting like these are, then I like to use monofilament, because then you don't see the stitching. Okay, so I'm going to be very, very careful. Magic pins, these are extra fine patchwork pins. These are the flathead ones. I kind of like these because the other ones are more round. They're not real big, but these are nice because they're really small and they lay really nice and flat. So you can also grab them when you're pulling them out. All right, let's go slowly over those. Okay. So keep my seams nice and flat. Tie off on the end. Okay, so we got these done. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get up and press these open. So let's take these out. Put my pins back in the drawer here. And there's our little top. Look at there. So I'll go press it flat. Isn't that cute? It's going to be so cute with the little backing and the binding on it. So I'm anxious to get this done. So I'll be back in a minute. I'll go press my seams. And again, I'm going to press my seams open so they're nice and flat. It helps with the bulk if you do that. So I'm going to lay them open like this. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, so there's our little top. Isn't that adorable? I love the colors. They're so vibrant. I still got to do a couple little jump clips in my snow me's words there, but okay. So now we need to get this attached to the backing. And I'm going to lay, I normally do this over on my table, and I may do that, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do. So here is the right side of my fabric, and I'm going to lay it right side down on my table. And then I'm going to lay my little top centered on this piece of fabric. Now you can see there's a little extra all the way around, which is nice, and we will trim that off when we're done. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take some of my quilting pins, and I'm going to go ahead and pin baste this. So, and then try to stay away from your seam allowances, because that's where we're going to be stitching. So I'm going to take this over so that it's a little flatter, and I'm going to put pins in each one of these blocks, and try not to pin into your vinyl. I'm going to pin like over on the sides here, and I'm going to pin into each one of my blocks so that everything stays together nicely. But remember, I did put the shape flex on the back of my fabric to help this fabric stay less wrinkly. It'll be less wrinkly when we go to stitch into it. So I'm going to take this over on my table, and I'm going to pin baste the whole thing, probably a couple of pins in each block just to hold it nicely together. And then we'll come back and we'll do the stitching in the ditch. Okay, so I've switched over to my monofilament thread. I'm all pin basted, so I put a couple of pins in each panel, and so that it's nice and flat on the back, and it's going to be held well. I'm hoping to be able to leave the pins in as I'm stitching. I'll probably be able to. And I have switched over to monofilament thread. So a couple of hints about monofilament. My favorite monofilament, one that I've worked with quite a bit and it works very well, is Metler Transfill. I have tried quite a few different monofilament threads that don't work very well in the machine, especially putting them in the bobbin. This one I have in the bobbin as well. The other trick with monofilament is that when you wind a bobbin of monofilament, just wind a little bit at a time, maybe an eighth or a quarter of a bobbin at most. And you can see I maybe have about an eighth of a bobbin or so. Just do a little bit at a time, not very much, and then also wind it slower. So a lot of the machines, I'll show you on my screen, a lot of the machines, if they have a screen like this, they allow you to adjust the speed of your bobbin winder. So you can see when this pops up on your screen, this is the speed here. So see how I turned it down to nearly the bottom. So you want it to wind slower and then a very small amount. So that is going to be our monofilament. Whoops, second here, I'm about to have help. Excuse me. Suddenly she thinks she needs to sit on my lap, I guess. My furry assistant here. Okay, so we're going to stitch in the ditch. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. You can use different kinds of feet to do this. My favorite way to do this is to actually just use my J-foot. You can use a walking foot if you want to. I judge where I'm sewing by this little notch in the middle of my foot here. And so I found that the J-foot actually works the best for me. Sometimes when you're doing multiple layers like this, you do need to use a walking foot. Now, I am not going to use a walking foot today. I'm just going to use my J-foot. I am going to grab my glasses, though. And we want to start kind of on the inside and work our way out. So there's really not a lot of lines in this one, so you can kind of start wherever you want to on this one. I am going to start at the top and move down. Since this one's not very big and it's well pinned, it should be fine. I am going to put my needle in the center position, so I'm still on my Q tab, so I'm going to go Q01. So I moves my needle to the center. I am going to make my stitches maybe a little longer. I think I'm going to do 3.0. So I did my Q01. I made the length 3.0 instead of 2.5, just a little bit longer. And just a moment, I have to address my assistant here. Sorry about that. It's almost time for eating, so we had to have some treats so she would relax for a few more minutes. All right, so I've got my monofilament in my needle here. This is the hardest thing, is to find the end. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to use my J-foot, and what we're going to do is we're going to stitch right in the middle of this seam here, okay? And just take your time. I do this quite deliberately. I don't have to do this very often, and I find that I have to really, take my time. I'm going to tie off my thread, monofilament in the needle and the bobbin, and I'm just going to slowly stitch down, right down the middle of the seam. And the thing that's nice about monofilament is if you have a little mistake, or you miss your seam a little bit, or the ditch, it doesn't show. So I like using monofilament for this. And just be careful not to hit your pins. But as I'm sewing, I'm looking at this little notch that's right here in the middle, and it goes right over that ditch. And I do better with this than I do with like a walking foot or something, because I don't have some of those markings on some of the other feet, and I struggle with that. So this is the foot that works the best for me. Okay, so there's one of our ditches. Let's turn it over so you can see the other side. You can see there's where we sewed. And the thing with the by putting the shape flex on the back, it's not going to get puckery, because if you just sew on the fabric likes to pucker up. And since there's no quilting like in this area here, now these are small blocks, so these won't be bad, but it makes puckers in the fabric. But I've really noticed that if I put this shape flex on, it just really keeps the fabric nice and flat. All right, so let's see if we can do this next one here. You don't have to do too many on this one, so it's kind of nice. I'm going to go in and tie off a little bit again. There we go. Got to watch my pins. So I'm just stitching right down in between the two pieces of fabric in the ditch or the seam. A lot of people ask, what's the ditch? And it's just the seam, the opening of the seam there. Just take your time. And lengthening your stitch just a little bit really helps make it smoother. There we go. Because we are going through some layers, so. And again, if it works better for you to use a walking foot, use a walking foot. There is a stitch in the ditch foot that has like a little blade that goes down through the middle. And if that works for you, use that. So let's see how we did. That looks pretty good. So there's the first two lines. So now all we have to do is turn it around. And we're going to do the horizontal lines. I got to find the other end of the thread though. This is the hardest thing about monofilament, is finding the thread and trying to get it to thread. So it doesn't always, the needle threaders don't always like the monofilament too well. It's kind of stiff, so it doesn't always thread. Now mine did thread, so that's the hardest part, is like if you have to thread it yourself. It's clear thread, and that makes it even harder. So we're just going down through that seam. And some of the little quilts, I was kind of looking through the rest of them for the first 6 months, and some of them don't have as many blocks. So like the next one, I think it had 4 little blocks for one, and it made it into 1 block. And then it has 3 larger blocks. So there's not as many blocks in February. So we won't have to sew through quite as many little blocks here. That looks good. Let's go do the other one, and then we'll turn it over, and we're almost done with this part. That was easy, wasn't it? The monofilament's good. It works really well. And we're going to go ahead and sew around the outside edge also, just to hold it together on the outside edge. So once I get this part done, make sure I don't hit this pin here. I'm just going to go stitch all the way around the outside edge at about 1/8 of an inch probably, just so that when I go to put my binding on, it won't show. Just to hold the edges together. It's looking pretty good. And I'm tying in and tying off at the ends so that nothing will come apart. That looks pretty good. Just put another stitch in there though. There we go. All right. So let's turn it over and see how we did. Looks pretty nice. And then I'm going to, oh yeah. So there's our back, and see it's nice and flat with that shape flex. It just made it nice and flat on the back. Okay, so now let's go ahead and stitch around the outside edge. And I'm going to leave my needle in the center. And what I use to help me with an 1/8 inch seam is there's actually 2 notches on this J-foot. There's one right over on the inside of the zigzag opening and one in the center. So I'm just going to put my fabric right on the one next to the edge of the zigzag opening. And then we're just going to stitch around the outside edge about 1/8 of an inch. So that way we know that the seam won't show. I'll just leave the monofilament in for that. That's fine. And that way we know our seam, that thread won't show when we go to put our binding on. It just holds the backing together a little bit. And that's also the line that I use like for top stitching and stuff like that. So I use the J-foot a lot because it can be used for almost everything. And I can judge better where I am with the J-foot on. All right, let me get that. There we go. Let's get this out of our way here. There we go. So I'm just doing about 1/8 of an inch all the way around here. To hold it together, and then we can take all the pins out. Make sure we don't hit this one. Okay. Turn the corner. If you notice also, did you notice that my foot's going up and down? I've got the pivot feature turned on, and a lot of people ask me about the pivot feature. I'll just show you the little button here. See the little button right here that looks like a foot with the needle through it? A lot of you have that on your machines, and I use that all the time because then I don't have to use so many buttons up on the front. So turn that on. It's very easy. Now, some of the machines will allow you, once you turn it on, it stays on automatically. That's what mine does. Some of the machines you have to turn it on each time that you use it, but it is a handy dandy thing. So I would recommend that. All right, so we're still doing 1/8 of an inch. I have to really concentrate when I do this. All right, so let's get to the edge here. But with the pivot then, see, I didn't have to touch my foot to bring my foot up. It just goes right up. And I use this for piecing too. I really like, so I have mine on all the time. It's good for chain piecing, for free motioning, because it drops the needle down. And then if you let up on the gas, it drops your needle so you won't lose your spot. So we're just about up to, I started in this corner up here, so we're just about around here. All right, and we'll tie off at this end here, and we're all the way around. Now we're ready to trim. So that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. I'll take all the pins out first, but then I'm going to take my ruler along the edge of my little snowmies here, and we're just going to trim that backing off to match. But look how nice and flat that is with the, I like that with the shape flex on the back because it makes it nice and flat. You can see the little lines, but it keeps it from puckering. This is what I always had trouble with when I did this type of quilt, is I just put the back on and then I couldn't figure out why all my back was so puckery. And it really works much better with the shape flex on the back. And then you could put another piece of batting in it. It says you could put another piece of batting in if you wanted to, but it's already really thick enough. And these are so small, I just thought it would make it ultra stiff and hard to handle. So I think that worked really well with just the shape flex on the fabric and the batting in the little designs. All right, so I'm going to go trim these off. Just take your ruler and make it and keep it nice and straight and trim your backing off to match the tops. And I'm going to take the pins out before I do that. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got this all trimmed and we're ready to put the we're going to put the little sleeve on the back. So you get to be my, you get to be with me through this. This was my thought in my head, so hopefully it will work. I've done these sleeves before, but I've always normally like stitched it down in the middle, but the blocks have to be a certain size. So I just decided we try the fusing method. So this was that, I'll go through the sleeve again. Well, this is the piece of the rectangle that was 12 inches long and 6 inches high. And then what I did is I marked on one side in 1/2 inch from the edge, and then just took a ruler and made that little angle on each side. You can see there's a little angle. So one side now measures about 11 inches and the other 12. And then I'm going to just hem. So I pressed over about 1/2 inch and another 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to put, I've got my, I switched over to cotton thread for this. My thread that I sewed my little quilt with was polyester just because there's quite a lot of bulk there and I wanted a little stronger thread. So we're just going to use some cotton thread to hem along the edges of this, and then to put the binding on we'll use cotton thread, and I may have to use monofilament to actually stitch it down because I'm not sure that I have a blue quite this light. So I think, yeah, I like to either match my thread for my binding or use monofilament, so I may have to use monofilament this time. All right, so we got those little hems in there. So once I hem it, I'm going to take this over to my ironing table and I'm going to press this in half like this. So the skinnier end, you can see the one end is skinnier, see, is going to be underneath. And then I'm also going to iron on, after I've pressed it and I've got my nice seam here, okay, I am going to press I've got about a 1/2 inch strip of heat and bond here, and I wasn't sure how long I needed it, so I just made it a little extra long, and I'll trim it off. But I'm just going to press this on to the back, which is the skinnier end, on the back, right down by the seam where right by the fold, I should say. I'm going to iron that on, and then we will press it to the back of the little wall or the little quilt, and then also then the raw edges up here will be in the binding. So this is my thought anyway, so hopefully I got this right. So I'm going to go press this and press this on, and then I'll come back and we will get ready to do the binding. Okay, so here's my little sleeve. I've got it pressed, and these are the raw edges here, and I found the center of it and put a pin there, and then here is my piece of heat and bond. That will be, you tear this paper off a little bit later, and then we'll press it down onto the back. So I'm just going to leave the paper on it for right now. But this is going to be in the seam allowance for the binding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over on the back. So we're going to put this on the back, and the part that had the narrower piece is going to be down. And I'm going to match up my pins here and then just pin this on like this. And make sure we got all the little, and I think I need to trim just a little. Wonder where my scissors went. I'm looking for scissors all the time. I'm just going to trim this little piece off. There we go. And we'll just make sure that we have this pinned into the seam allowance all the way down here. And the reason you taper it a little bit is that then there's not so much bulk because of the, where your little hems are. So that's why you taper it down, so that you don't have so much bulk then. You won't see that tapered part, it's underneath. All right, so let me get a pin, and we will put some pin here. That's where the one piece is, and the other piece is right here. All right. Oops. Like that. And then we will press this down in a little bit once we're done with putting the binding on. So let's go ahead and get our binding on here. Put a couple extra pins in here. And this will all be sewn into the seam with the binding. All right. So I've still got my gray cotton thread in here, and we'll use that to put the binding on. But I think I'll switch back to my monofilament to sew it down. And I put binding on the back of the little quilt here, and then I'm going to turn it around to the front and sew it down with the sewing machine with a zigzag. And so if you like to hand stitch, you want to sew it on the front. So depending on how you like to put your binding on, but I'm going to put mine on the back. We're going to start down here at the bottom, and I've got 2¼ inch binding. I prefer 2¼ but if you like 2½, go ahead and use 2½. And I am going to start here at the bottom with my binding, and I'm going to, let's see, we'll start up here a little ways and maybe stitch from about here. And I'm going to go back to Q02 for my 1/4 inch piecing, and I've left my J foot on again. Let's go down to about here, and we're going to stitch on the back. I'm on the back here. We're going to stitch 1/4 inch seam and stitch our binding on. So I figured I might as well just do the whole thing. Since I'm doing this, I'll just video as I'm going here. So we'll just stitch down. And this is the way I like to do binding. I like to do binding with, I've got some stuff behind here that is kicking. There we go. I like to do binding with the sewing machine. So we're going to go down to the end, we're going to stop about 1/4 inch from the end, tie off. And again, I've just got 100% cotton thread, Pima cotton thread in the needle and the bobbin. I'm going to do my little turn. So I'm going to stop at my corner. I'm going to turn up at a 45-degree angle. Okay. And then I'm going to bring it straight down and line up the raw edges. Straight down and line up the raw edges. And I have much more detailed quilt or binding, a couple of binding videos if you're interested in watching more binding. I did one specific video that was with the Kimberbell Cuties series that's just binding. So that might be something if you need more detail than what I'm going to do in this video. But a lot of you have done binding before, or you've seen me do this before. So we're just going to go around. Getting all the way up here. I'm getting ready to turn the corner again. I don't know how I always get so lucky as to get a seam right in the corner. Have you ever noticed that you do that? No matter what I do or where I put my seam, it always ends up being in a corner. I don't know why, but it always is. It must be Murphy's Law, right? Okay, so we're going to turn the corner here. Okay, cut. I'm going to turn my corner back. See, I got my seam in the corner, but you know what? It'll be okay. Nobody's going to pay attention to that. And lay this down. Now we're going to be going also over that little sleeve, so just be careful of the pins. I'll probably pull the pins as I get there. We're going through quite a few layers here. Okay, get started. I don't want to take it out until so I know that I won't miss it. All right. So I'm sewing over the little sleeve too. And I'll show you the couple little hanging options then once I get the binding on. So that binding's all, or that little sleeve is going to be all up in the binding. You'll never know. And then we will adhere the rest of it here once we get done with this part. Still doing my 1/4 inch seam. Let's see if I can get this one out too. Maybe I can. See where my end is. It's right there. So I'm going to stop about 1/4 inch from the end. Tie off. Get my pins out of the way here. So see, look. So we're got our little sleeve all in there. This was the way I was envisioning it. I was hoping I was going to do it correctly. I haven't done a sleeve for a while. I used to do them quite often on things, but I haven't done one for a while. So I thought, how can I do this one though? I usually stitch like down where this fold is. I usually stitch there, but I didn't have a place that I could really stitch unless I made it really long. So I thought, well, we'll just try the fusing part and see if that works. I think it's going to. Then we can make them all the same size. But I thought it'd be nice to have something I could hang in a little hanger. All right. So then we're gonna start down this side, make sure I'm all lined up. But yes, so if you are going to do your hand stitching on your binding, you can still put the sleeve on the same way. You would just put, you would just stitch over once you have it stitched in with the binding. It'll be fine, and you can just hand stitch over it. All right, we're getting just about there. Hopefully I have enough binding. This was 1 width of fabric plus a half. I had yardage for this because I didn't have any fat quarters. Okay, cut on the corner. I stopped about 1/4 inch from the corner. And then I'm going to turn my 45 degrees. Get it all lined up and then bring it straight down. And then we'll stop so we can do the flip at the end. I won't stitch in too far because I don't have too big of, I need to have a little bit to flip things around here, so I won't stitch in too far. All right, so I'm going to go in and tie off my 1/4 inch seam, and then let's go in. We won't go too far in, maybe just to here. And tie off there so we'll have a little bit to flip over here to do the ending. Okay, so we're going to do this. Get my, see if I can find my marker and my seam gauge, my hem gauge. It's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Okay. So then we're going to, I'll always lay this piece. This is the piece we ended with. I kind of fold this over like this. Oh, good. I had enough binding. And then we're going to, I might, well, this will be okay. I think this will be all right. We want this to be, since this was 2 1/4 inch binding, we're going to overlap this 2 1/4 inches. So I've got my 2 1/4 inches marked on my little hem gauge. And I'm going to put a pin at my 2 1/4 inch mark on the back piece, the piece that we're going to cut off. So I'm going to mark it right there. Make sure I got it accurate. So put my pin in, fold this over a little bit, and then we will measure again. It's always good to measure a couple of times just in case, because it's a real bummer if you cut off too much binding. That looks pretty good. Okay. So then we're going to cut this off where the pin is. maybe. My good sis, where did I put my, oh, they must be over on the other side. I'll have to grab a different pair of scissors here. I always need a pair of scissors that's straight for this. There we go. I'll go get my scissors. They're over on my ironing board. Okay, so there are our little ends. So this one here is going to fold up and open with the right side showing right there. So this is going to be a little short, but we'll be okay. These little short quilts are always a little harder to put binding on, okay? Then this piece over here, we're going to fold it down like it's 45 degrees like this, but then we're going to keep going and just keep going. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to keep going in the same direction and bring this up and match up these two corners. So on the group there is a, in the Dropbox there is a, and I might put that in here too. I'll link it. There is a thing called Bind Aid, and it's a little piece of paper that I learned to bind using that piece of paper. And it has really helped me because then I understand what I'm doing and all the parts and everything. So my binding has gotten way better. They do it on the front and on that sheet, but this is you do this part the same way either way. If you're going to do it by machine, put it down by machine or put it down by hand stitching. But depends on if you put it on the front or the back. All right, so now I got to mark my little corners so I know where my corners are here. So there's one of them right there. This one I can see. So I'll use that. So when these little guys, they're kind of stiff. So it's a little hard to get this little thing laid flat, but we'll fiddle with it here. We'll just get it flattened out here. All right. All right, so I'm going to go back to Q01, which is the center needle position. And I'm going to line up on that line that I made. And take a few stitches to get started, and then I have to straighten this out a little bit. These are always a little tough. These small things are kind of stiff, so they're hard to get it all lined up and flat. Okay, let's see how we did here. And then we're going to aim to the other corner. And you can draw that line in if you want to all the way across. I usually just kind of aim and usually come out pretty well, so we'll see how we did here. All right, hopefully it's flat. So lay this down, take the pins out. Oh my gosh, I think we got it. Look at there. So then it's going to lay flat like that. Okay, and then I'm going to take this bulky piece out. Gotta go get my scissors though. Take this bulky piece out. And then we will finish sewing our binding down. We're almost done. This is turning out great. I love the little light blue fabric. It's pretty. Okay, I'm going to finger press this open too. All right. So now we need, oops, sir. I'm going to put a couple pins in here. I always put a few pins in this last piece just to make sure that I got it, that I keep it flat. Sometimes it stretches just a little bit when you do the flip, and I like to put some pins in just to flatten it all out. I go to sew this down. And a couple more in yet. Kind of stretches a little bit when you flip it over. And this was kind of this one's a little stiffer, so it's a little harder to get it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Q02 for my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we will finish the binding. And then we're going to stitch it down. Make sure I get that nice and even. looking pretty good. Just a little bit here. So let's see if I can work that fullness in just a little bit. There we go. I always have a little bit of fullness on these small ones because it's so small, but it should be okay. There we go. All right, I'm going to tie that off, and we've got the binding sewn on. So I have to, the next step, since I'm going to be doing this by machine, is I am going to take this over to my ironing board again. And I am going to press this out. And you want to press this with a very crisp press all the way around the edge. Okay. And then at the same time, I am going to go ahead and press this down. I'm going to take my paper off of this, and I may do that first so that I press my little sleeve down also at the same time while I'm pressing. So I'll press along here, and then I'm going to take the paper off of this and then press this down to the back so that it's permanent. Okay. So I will be right back, and then I will go around, we'll go around the front with the monofilament and finish our little quilt. Okay, so we're ready to put our binding on here. And how I do it is, again, I put the binding on the back. I pressed this out to a nice crisp press right here. I also took the paper off of my little sleeve, and here's my little sleeve. It's all pressed down now on the back, so that looks nice, and I've got it all pressed down. And then what I do is I turn my binding to the front. I clip on each corner. That's the only places I clip, is just on either side of the corners. So I have 8 clips on here. And then I'm going to make my corners. So since I've already started the binding video, I might as well just keep on going, right? So I'm going to go ahead, and the way I make my corners, I get my clip, and I'm going to run my binding right up the seam where I sewed it down. I'm going to stick my thumb up into this corner, and I'm going to pull this down. I got to get a pin ready. And I'm going to pull this down and make a nice, beautiful 45-degree angle, and I'm going to pull it down to the stitching on the other side of the seam and put the pin in. There we go. Got that side, and then we're going to do the same thing here. I think I have a few little hairs sticking out here, so we'll just get those trimmed off. Do the same thing. Get my pin ready here, and I'm going to line this up with the stitching line. Oops, got another little string that's in the way. Push my thumb up into the corner and push out so that I get a nice 45-degree angle, and pull down to the seam allowance on the other side. Put my pin in there like that. It holds that nice, beautiful corner. All right, let's get another one here. This one had small, so it doesn't take long to get all the corners done. So I'm going to do the same thing. Push my thumb up into the corner, hold it, make my 45-degree angle, and bring it down to the other seam allowance. Put the pin in. Looks pretty good. And then one more. Usually there's one corner that just insists on being contrary. And these have all been pretty good. The one is a little bit, because you remember I told you I had my seam in that one, so it's just this one. Actually, it went together a little easier than I thought it would. It's a little bulkier, so. All right, so we'll get this one lined up. I'm going to put my thumb up into the corner, get my pin ready, bring it down to the other side, make my nice 45-degree angle, and stick my pin into that corner. And keep it nice and straight. All right. So there is my binding ready to go on. Now the next thing I have to do is I'd rather use cotton thread. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment and see if I can find some light blue that'll match that. I thought I didn't have any, but I'm going to take one more look because it's easier to work with the cotton thread than the monofilament. Okay, so monofilament it is. I didn't have a blue that was light enough. So you like to have very matchy thread to your binding when you sew it on with the machine so you don't see that color. So I am going to be using monofilament. And what I do is I bring this around, and I'm going to bring my binding just around to my stitching line. And I'm going to put my machine foot, that little notch that I talk about, right on the edge of the binding. I am going to go now back to show you the stitch I'm going to use. I'm going to go back to my regular tab here, tab number 1, and I'm going to use my zigzag number 1-10. And I have this one set up in my machine for binding. I like to use it 2 millimeters wide and the length of 1.4. So it's very narrow, and it's just a little longer apart. So that works out really well for the binding. So I'm just using the regular zigzag, 2 millimeters wide and 1.4 millimeters long. Okay. So then I'm going to drop my needle into the binding. So you're going to be taking one stitch on the binding and one stitch off the binding. And you're bringing the binding right up to the stitching line that you stitched it on with. So I'm going to tie off. Okay. And then we're just going to start zigzagging. One stitch on the binding and one stitch off the binding. I got to get this lined up and just do a little bit at a time. You don't have to be in a hurry. Give me just a second here. I'm getting caught on I didn't take my embroidery unit off, so I'm getting caught on my hoop attachment. Something sounds funny. Let me make sure. Something is, every now and then I get a weird little thing going on with my monofilament thread. And if you notice, my monofilament thread does not like to stand up. So I would recommend laying it down on the machine, you know, like where you lay down the thread. It does, mine always seems to do better that way. And I'm just bringing that binding around to my sewing line. One stitch on the binding, one stitch off the binding. That's looking pretty good. So we'll just keep on going here. I'll show you how to do the corner, and then I'll probably turn the camera off while I go around a couple more corners. I'll show you the last one, then you don't have to sit here and watch me sew binding on. But it is handy to be able to see how I do this. I have a lot of people ask me about the binding, and it works really well, and I do a lot of binding, so I like to stitch mine on with the sewing machine. And I've never been a hand sewer. I don't care to hand sew. So I do most of my binding all of my binding now with the machine. After I learned this method, it took me a while to learn this. And once you've done it, you get better at it, let me tell you. So my binding looks pretty good now most of the time. Especially if you use very matchy thread or monofilament, because you don't see the stitches hardly at all on the front. So I'm going to go into the corner, so you notice I'm going into the corner. I'm not taking out the pin. Okay, take a stitch or two into the corner, and then I'm going to turn the corner, and I'm going to look at my notch. And it needs to be right on my binding. So I need to take one more stitch because I notice I'm a little shy. So I'm just going to take one more stitch in there. Then I'm going to turn again, take my little clip off. And I am going to line my binding up. Make sure I'm laying on my, looks like I'm laying right on there. So this should be good. And then I'm just going to go out of the corner. So just make sure you're all lined up. And if you need to move your needle, you can move your needle a little bit. Heading up the other side. That looks pretty good. The monofilament, you can see the stitches a little bit, you know, because you can see the like the impression of the stitches, but it's not, it doesn't really show. And I use monofilament quite often if I can't find the right color of thread. But this Metler Transfill is great. Oh, second here. My machine's doing its little trick. If you bonk that little embroidery, the little flipper for the embroidery hoop, sometimes it makes the machine mad. Alright, so we're going up the side here. Alright. I'll do another corner, and then I will turn off the camera for a little bit while I go around a couple more, and then I'll show you the finished product. I'm going to go up into the second corner. Again, I've got my binding right up to that line that I sewed on, and I'm taking the left hand stitch is off the binding and the right hand stitch is on the binding. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. And here's my corner. Whoops, here, I got a little bit off on that one, didn't I? There we go. Got a stitch in there, but it won't show. Alright, so I'm going up into the corner. Okay, and I'm going to turn the corner here. Now this time I'm way overshot it. So what I'm going to do is put my foot down, and my notch is way over here. So I'm going to raise my needle, and I'm just going to slide over so that my notch is right on the edge of my binding. Drop my needle back down, and that's fine. You won't see it on the back. And then I will continue out of the corner. So give me a second here to get these lined up, and we'll start right out of the corner. All right. So I'll go ahead and pause for a moment while I go around the rest of it. And you just go all the way around, and then when you get to the end over here, stop about, when we get over here to the end, I'm going to stop right on top of it, so I don't want to overlap the zigzags, because otherwise you might see where they overlap a little bit. I'll be back when I get around to the end. Figured I'm coming into this last corner. I'll show you the corner one more time. So we're going to come into the corner, leave the pin in there, take a couple stitches into the corner, and then we're going to do the turn. And then I'm a little bit off on this one too, so if I can see that my notch is over to the right a little bit, so I'm going to raise my needle. I drop my foot down first. I'm going to push this over just a little bit, line it back up, and then come out of the corner. And then I can show you the end, so hopefully I'll be able to see it. Sometimes it's hard to see on the monofilament. I'm going to stick a pin in here. Here's the pin. We'll put a pin right there where we know where the end of the monofilament is. Trim this little hair out of there. And come around to the very end. We're almost done. This is going to be so cute. Put the embellishments on it. So cute. All right, we're just about there. All right, so I don't want to take too many stitches in. I'm going to tie it off right there. And we made it all the way around. All right, there is our binding. Take these pins out, make sure my points look nice. I think that looks good. Oh my goodness, isn't that going to be cute? Can't wait to put the embellishments on. So that's the next part. We get to put all the embellishments on. Doesn't want to give me the pin back. There we go. So there is our little January mini quilt. And then I got the little sleeve on the back. Isn't that cute? I like that sleeve. So that's going to work great. Now I'll show you how we're going to put it in the frame too. So let me go find my embellishments. And I think we'll probably do glue gun for the embellishments here. You could sew them on also if you wanted to sew all the buttons on. But there's like 2 buttons on every little guy. So I don't think I'm going to do that. We think we're going to be using some hot glue here. So let me go find that stuff, and I will be back to do the finishing touches. Okay, so we're ready for some embellishments. And the embellishments weren't in a separate little pack. It was in a little pack here, and it had the little black buttons like these, and then it has there's a little pack of pom-poms, and it looks like to me that there's one that's a darker pink and a red, and then a blue one and a yellow one that we're supposed to put on this. So the rest of these pom-poms all match in color, so I'm assuming those are for a different project. Haven't looked at all of them yet, so we'll get the darker one out, and then here's the red, and the rest of these all match. So I bet they're for something else. Maybe they're for like the Easter one or something. So we'll put those back in here, and they all match. So I'll put those back in here, and then here's all these little black buttons. So I'm going to try something. I'm not sure what is going to be the best plan here. I was a little worried about using hot glue on the glitter vinyl because I wasn't sure how the hot glue would go for these little buttons. And if you want to sew them on, by all means do that. I just don't like to sew. So I think I'm going to use hot glue on the pom-poms. So we'll put the pom-poms on with hot glue on the top of the little hats here. And I got my little glue gun, so we'll go ahead and do that. So let's get some of these pins out of the way here so you can see what I'm doing. And lay these over here. So I'm kind of looking at the picture over here on page 24, and it shows to put the pom-poms on. So let's do the pom-poms first. And I'm going to use my little glue gun, and we're just going to put a little bit of hot glue on the back of the pom-pom, and we'll put it on the top of a hat here. So I think the hot glue will work fine for that. And again, they say to sew them on, but I don't usually sew. And then I've got the little bit darker pink pom-pom, and we're going to put that on the little pink one here because there was only one this color and the rest of them were all lighter. So we'll go with this one for this one. So put it on the top of his little hat there. Okay. Then let's see, we got to put, there's a yellow one and a blue one. So here's the yellow one up here. So let's put that one on. Put that one on up here. Oh my gosh, those are going to be so cute. It really adds just that little bit, doesn't it? And I bet the buttons will look really cool. And then the other little guy up here had that blue hat, and so here's the blue pom-pom. So we'll put that one on up here. So there's the hats. So I used hot glue for those. But I'm thinking, I have this new glue, and I love this glue. It is a craft glue that I use for my card making, but it really sticks really well, and it's not hot. It's a regular glue. So this is my new little toy. I like this. It's from My Sweet Petunia. It's called the Precision Glue Gun, and it has a Nuvo glue. It's a craft adhesive, so it's a heavier adhesive, but it works really well. So let's see if this will work for our buttons. So I'm going to open these little buttons here. So they have this little pack of black buttons, if I can find the opening here. And we're going to put 2 buttons on each one. So let's just put some out here so we can get to them. Okay, whoop. They said you could put 2 or 3 on, but most of these are pretty small snowmen, so I think 2 will be enough on all of them. But I think we can use the Nuvo glue for this. So I'm going to kind of I'm looking at my little picture in the book, kind of see where they put them. So let's just try, I'm going to put a dab of glue and a dab of glue on the, and I put a pretty good dot, and these are tiny buttons. They're like 8, maybe 1/4 inch buttons at the most. And I'm just going to put that down in my Nuvo glue. And the Nuvo glue dries clear, and I just love this precision glue gun. I've always had trouble with glue, and I found this here not too long ago, and it is awesome. So I'm not sure how well this is going to do. This is just my thought, because I'm not sure if it's going to stay, because I'm not sure if it's going to like this. It's the glitter vinyl. I'm not sure if it's going to like that glitter vinyl. I think I may have to do hot glue. Yeah, I think it's going to just come off. The problem with adhesive glues like that, so I wanted to try it. The problem with adhesive glues like that is if there's nothing to like sink into, it makes it difficult for it to stick. And so I think we're going to have to do a little hot glue. So I'm going to put the glue on the button, not on the snowman. So let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to try putting the glue on the button, not putting a ton on. Okay, and then I'm going to put it down on the little snowman. Try to put the buttons holes the right way. I think we're going to have to use the hot glue. Unless you want to sew all these little buttons on. If you like to sew buttons on, go ahead and sew the buttons on. And this is a little bit of that Nuvo glue, so it's going to dry clear, so it'll be okay. All right. So I think that's going to work. I think we're going to go with the hot glue. I thought maybe the Nuvo glue would work, but you know, with the glitter vinyl, I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. Okay, so let's see the other ones here. Let's see, he kind of did this. Put a couple on that one. I don't think it's so hot that it will really damage the it'll really damage the heat transfer vinyl. I think it's not that hot. This is a low high temp glue gun. This is my little Gorilla glue gun, and it does work quite well for stuff, and it looks like it's going to be okay. It's hard to do these little buttons though. All right, so I think that'll work. Put these a little closer together. Yeah, that's going to work. Okay, so I am going to go put 2 little buttons on every single one of these with my hot glue gun, and then I will be back to show you the final result. So it's going to take me a little bit to do all these. I didn't figure you'd want to sit here and watch me put all these little buttons on. So I will do that, and I'll be back, and then I'll show you how I'm going to display my little mini quilt. All right, so I got all the buttons on. I just hot glued them. That seemed to work pretty well. I was hoping that the Nuvo glue would work, but I think it's because the glitter vinyl is rough and it wasn't allowing it to, glues like that have to sink into like a surface to really adhere. So the glitter is kind of rough, and so it wasn't wanting to adhere, but the hot glue worked really well. I'm just going to clean up my buttons a little bit. I need to go and shine them up a little bit. And then I put this on my Ackfeld 12 by my 12-inch little stand, and this is a freestanding stand, and I'll put a link for this on the website as well. Or the other option might be, if you want to hang it on the wall, I have this is the little hanger I was telling you about that has the little bar that goes through the little sleeve on the back, and then you can hang it up on the wall. So that's another option. That one's 12 inches also. That's on the website too, on ShieldSewingCenter.com. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see the sleeve, but I just slid it into the sleeve. There's a little, sorry, my stand, I need to crimp it a little bit. It's falling apart. But these are a little loose sometimes. You just have to take a pliers and make them a little tighter. But you just slip these little bars through the little sleeve like that, and then it just hangs like so nicely there. So I'm going to slide this around so you can see it again. But there is our Chillin' with My Snowmies January mini quilt from Kimberbell. Isn't that adorable? And that was really a fun project. And you will have some buttons left over. Just if you only put 2 on, they gave you enough to put 3. So I did have a few buttons left over. There should be about 8 buttons in there if you only put 2 on. But I liked the 2. I thought that looked fine. And they're all hot glued on, and the little pom-poms for the hats. So there is our little project for January. So in February, we'll do this again. I'll try to get the February one done a little bit earlier, so that you have it done before February. I didn't get around to getting this done until this is the 1st of January. This is New Year's Day, so I'm finishing this up. But isn't that adorable? So I will see you with the next mini quilt for February. And if you liked the videos, I did 4 of them for the January. If you liked the videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed to Sew Along with Jan. Also come visit us on Facebook. If you're not in the Facebook group, come join the Facebook group too. And all the live videos will be on both Facebook and YouTube now, and this series though will all be pre-recorded. So we will start our next classes in January. January 17th is when we're going to start. So if you have any questions, you can email me at janshieldsewing@gmail.com. You can message me through Facebook or ask questions on YouTube in the comments, and I will answer your comments. So thanks a lot, everybody, and have a great day.